Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Okay, today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, actually texts 26 and 27. Tam Dhyashtra Varsham Sukumara Pada Kadordu Bhavang Shakapola Gatram Charvayak Taksho Nashatu Yakarna Subravananam Kambu Sujata Kantam. Wow, that one's a little bit of a tongue twister today. All right, so synonyms together. Tam, him. Dviashta, 16. Varsham, years. Sukumara, delicate. Pada, legs. Kara, hands. Uru, thighs. Bahu, arms. Angsha, shoulders. Kapula, forehead. Gatram, body. Chadu, beautiful. Ayata, broad. Aksha, eyes. Unasa, high nose. Tulya, similar. Karna, ears. Subru, nice brows. Ananam, face. Kambu, conch shell. Sujata, nicely built. Kantam, neck. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. Purport. A respectable personality is described beginning with the legs, and this honored system is observed here with Shukadeva Goswami. He was only 16 years of age. A person is honored for his achievements and not for advanced age. A person can be older by experience and not by age. Sri Shukadeva Goswami, who is described herein as the son of Vyasadeva, was by his knowledge more experienced than all the sages present there, although he was only 16 years old. And then text 27. His collarbone was fleshy, his chest broad and thick, his navel deep, and his abdomen beautifully striped. His arms were long, and curly hair was strewn over his beautiful face. He was naked, and the hue of his body reflected that of Lord Krishna. Purport. His bodily features indicate him to be different from common men. All the signs described in connection with the bodily features of Shukadeva Goswami are uncommon symptoms, typical of great personalities, according to physiognomical calculations. His bodily hue resembled that of Lord Krishna, who is the supreme amongst the gods, demigods, and all living beings. Okay, so we'll go back to 26. I'll read one more time. This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. Where else do we see a neck being described as a conch shell? There's a song we sing every year at a certain time of the year. Does anyone know or remember?
Damodarashtakam?
Yeah, Damodarashtakam. What is it? Says the same thing, right?
Damodarashtakam.
Charika Kanta. What is it? What is that line? I don't like to sing Damodarashtakam outside of Kartik, but I just I don't want to get the melody stuck in my head. But it's one of those like special songs we sing at a certain time of the year, and I like to reserve it for that. But what's that? I'm trying. I can't think of the beginning of the line.
Muhu swasa kampate trikaka kante.
Yeah. It's the three lines. His neck is has the three lines like a conch shell.
Yeah.
So we see that description. You see the conch shell has the three lines on it, the big conch shells. So we're seeing also that Shukadeva Goswami has other features. Like he has the same bodily hue as Krishna. And the three lines like a conch shell and his eyes, it says his eyes are beautifully wide. And typically that's what they describe as like a lotus petal, right? So his eyes are beautifully wide. And we see Krishna described as having lotus eyes. So he's somewhat similar. And who else? Who else has the same hue as Krishna that we know from the Bhagavad?
Uddhava.
Yeah, Uddhava. Yeah. So there's different. So we get to one thing we could see about Krishna's personality and character is that he's not jealous. He doesn't mind other living entities having the same bodily color that he does. Like it's very unique that Krishna has that color, that the hue of a dark rain cloud, as they say, this blue, a blue that we don't experience in this world. Actually, it's described. It's not a blue that we see in this world. We can only try to, paint uh, portraits of Krishna where we try to use a blue color that looks very beautiful, but it's nothing we see in this world, nothing we witness here. But so it's very unique, but still he shares it with others. His supremacy, he's not insecure. His supremacy can never be challenged, right? He is who he is, and no matter whether or not people look like him or don't look like him, he'll always be God. So he doesn't have to Krishna doesn't worry about whether his supremacy is going to be challenged by other people having some of the same bodily features that he does, the color and things like that. So Krishna is very generous and he shares these things. It's not he's not worried about it. We can see in this world we're subjected to the three modes of nature, and our mind is contaminated by a desire to do things or enjoy things separately from Krishna. And because that's not realistic, because we can't really enjoy separately from Krishna, we try really hard to keep things to ourselves, right? We have our thing and we don't want to share perhaps. And we were talking about this the other day, that even though Krishna gives us these things, he supplies all of our everything we need. Well, people still don't want to share it with him. He hands it to them and they, okay, thank you, and they run off with it, right? Prabhupada says that in the Nectar of Instruction in one of his purports, I think it's to the first verse, that controlling the urges of the tongue, Prabhupada says that if you put a bag of rice out on the street, the birds will come and take a few grains and go away, but a human will come and take the whole bag. And then they'll put it somewhere, they'll hide it away somewhere. So we like to try to take things in this world and we try to hold on to it and keep it for ourselves and because we don't want to maybe share, and we don't want to share in the spotlight at all. We want to be the kind of, with, as they say, the head honcho or the top dog. We don't want to share the limelight. But Krishna, right, he tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Why does he tell Arjuna to say that instead of him just saying it himself? There's a couple reasons.
So that like devotee words, Krishna will protect devotee words.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And also Krishna doesn't mind to have somebody else declare something besides him, that he's gonna keep their word, but also that people will hear from the devotee and they'll have faith and trust in the devotee. So he tells him to declare it boldly. So Krishna, this just speaks to his character. Okay, so let's see. There was something I wanted to, yeah, I'm gonna read I think it's in this purport. Yeah, a respectable personality is described beginning with the legs. So this is like kind of the bottom part of the body, right? So when we take darshan of the deities, where do we start?
Lotus feet we supposed to, but we
Yeah, we
don't
start with
know.
the lotus feet. Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to read something from the Bhagavatam. This is the fourth canto, 24th chapter, text 52. This is chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is describing Krishna's feet, and I'm going to read a little bit from Prabhupada's purport about this. My dear Lord, your two lotus feet are so beautiful that they appear like two blossoming petals of the lotus flower, which grows during the autumn season. Indeed, the nails of your lotus feet emanate such a great effulgence that they immediately dissipate all the darkness in the heart of a conditioned soul. My dear Lord, kindly show me that form of yours, which always dissipates all kinds of darkness in the heart of a devotee. My dear Lord, you are the supreme spiritual master of everyone. Therefore, all conditioned souls covered with the darkness of ignorance can be enlightened by you as the spiritual master. So he's focusing, what Prabhupada's going to focus on in the purport and is focused on in this verse is Krishna's feet, and then Krishna as the spiritual master and how that's is enlightening. Your lotus feet emanate such a great effulgence that they immediately dissipate the darkness in the heart of a conditioned soul. So definitely when you take darshan, remember, start with the lotus feet. And of course, there's another thing is why so much emphasis? Why do we have so much emphasis on feet in the Hare Krishna movement? What's the deal with feet? Why do we start there? Why do we touch people's feet? Why do we talk about bowing down to the
To
lotus feet?
keep us humble or for humility or something.
Yeah, to keep us humble. Right?
Mm.
We're starting the feet are considered the lowest part of the body. It's not a thing in America. People don't it's not that they don't like obviously they know the difference between their feet and their head. But it's not a thing in America that it's considered like an offense, for example, to touch someone with your feet. That's not that concept isn't there in the culture. But in this culture, in this Vedic culture, we see that the feet are spoken about a lot, and to show humility is to touch the feet. They're considered they are the lowest part of the body, right? And when you think about in this day and age, it's harder to imagine the problem with the feet, but in a time when people traveled in on dusty roads and you travel with your feet and your feet get dirty, right? There's always this bathing of the feet. When someone's been traveling, they get they make like an exalted person will get their feet bathed. So if we put ourselves in that historical context, that there are the daily lives of people were very different, obviously, than they are now. And so bathing the feet of somebody, or, the feet, they're considered low, they're considered typically dirty, right? Because you're walking around on them and everything. So to touch that part of someone's body is considered to be, and if you even think about it, you have to bow down your head in order. If you have to touch someone's feet, you got to really bow down. And then it was a thing. Actually, this very funny thing happened once a long time ago. It was a thing, you try to touch the devotee's feet to get mercy and blessings. And there was a couple of us speaking in the book room in one of the temples, and a devotee came down and there were two devotees talking, and he reached down towards their feet and they jumped back, because there was also another thing, like for us to show humility too, is no, don't touch my feet, you'll get my karma and stuff. So the devotee was like jumping back, like, don't touch my feet, and the other devotee said, no, I was just trying to grab my shoes, because their shoes were right next to that other devotee. So the devotee, of course, thought that they were going for their feet, but it looked like they were. But that just popped into my mind, because it used to be a thing where we was trying to touch each other's feet. But so that's the thing, is just to bow down the head, to go to the lowest part of the body. And then of course on Krishna, this emphasis on his feet, that it's not no part of his body is less clean or lower than another part of his body. But for us as devotees, to start with Krishna's feet is to be humble, to take shelter, right? And even Lord Chaitanya says that in the Shikshashtaka, that let me be one of the particles of dust at your lotus feet. So we're the jiva souls, like the particles of dust on Krishna's feet, the lowest part of the body. And so Prabhupada's going to talk about how the Bhagavatam is divided into portions based on like Krishna's body. It correlates with Krishna's body. So he says, Lord Shiva has, this is in the purport, Lord Shiva has thus described the bodily features of the Lord authoritatively. Now he wants to see the lotus feet of the Lord. When a devotee wants to see the transcendental form of the Lord, he begins his meditation on the Lord's body by first looking at the feet of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be the transcendental sound form of the Lord. And the 12 cantos are divided in accordance with the transcendental form of the Lord. The first and second cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam are called the two lotus feet of the Lord. It is therefore suggested by Lord Shiva that one should first try to see the lotus feet of the Lord. This also means that if one is serious about reading Srimad Bhagavatam, he must begin by seriously studying the first and second cantos. So, we know that Prabhupada always talked about how people who just want to read mundane romances or want to perhaps make a show of being more advanced than they are, they want to jump to the 10th canto where Krishna has his Rasa Leela pastimes with the gopis. But Prabhupada always emphasizes that you have to start with the first canto. You have to work your way towards the 10th canto because you have to qualify yourself to understand the 10th canto. If you don't read the first 9 chapters first, then you'll misunderstand, as Prabhupada said, the 10th canto is a mundane romance. It can turn, rather than seeing it through the eyes of love, we see it through the eyes of lust. So Prabhupada talks about these professional reciters who recite the Rasa Leela, and then people come and they shed, these kind of false materialistic tears where they think that they're in this bhava, but actually it's just kind of a mundane emotion that they're experiencing, just hearing what they consider to be an ordinary romantic stories, rather than really understand the deeper spiritual meaning behind what's happening in the 10th canto. So why Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book as early on as he did, because he wasn't sure, rightly so, if he would make it to the 10th canto to translate himself. He wasn't sure what would happen in the future with that. And so you can see when you read the Krishna book, the philosophy is built into it. It's not just, you're not just reading a story. He says, he translates a few verses. He doesn't do it verse by verse. It's written like a narrative form, but there's a couple descriptions and then there's a whole lot of philosophy, and then a few descriptions from the story and then a whole lot of philosophy. So he wants to make sure it's not misunderstood. And you can always hear when you hear Prabhupada's classes or you hear him on a walk with the devotees, when he's explaining the philosophy, he says it over and over again, just try to understand this point. And just last night I was watching a video with Prabhupada giving a talk, and he's sitting on this, really big Vyasasana, and there's people fanning him, and he's got the garland on and all the sandalwood, and here's all this kind of fanfare surrounding him, and you could see his mood. If Prabhupada was sitting in a folding chair or in a Vyasasana or on a throne, it doesn't matter. He always had this mood. Try to understand this. Just try to understand. We're in this material world. We need to take shelter of Krishna. We need to get out of this world. And so he was saying that it's just so strongly preaching Krishna consciousness. He never, his position, the honor and worship he received from his disciples never ever changed his mood or his message. Whether he was in 26 Second Avenue talking to the first few hippies that came, and we're kind of, sometimes you could hear in some of his classes like they're falling asleep and he's telling them to wake up. Whether he's there or whether he's sitting in opulence, you wouldn't know it unless you saw it where he was. You wouldn't know. He just always is just on message. He's always wants people to understand this message of Krishna consciousness. So it's always on target. Those things never went to his head. He never took that position to exploit anybody or try to boost himself up. He was just, you can see that he always had that mood of just trying to make people understand Krishna consciousness. And the reason I'm saying this is because here in the bottom of this paragraph of this purport, he says, because someone could say, okay, all right, fine, I got to read the first 9 cantos before I can get to the 10th canto. Let me just get through them. Let me just read. I'll try to read this many verses every day and I'll try to just get through it quickly. But Prabhupada says this means that one must begin by seriously studying the first and second cantos, seriously studying. And in the first and second cantos, what you learn is who Krishna really is, what his nature is, what his relationship is with his devotees. I mean, you learn it throughout the Bhagavatam. But if you see Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, you'll see that so much philosophy is packed into the first canto. And within the first canto, everything is packed within the first verse. And the first purport to the first verse of the Bhagavatam, the philosophy is all there. And then it expands. Prabhupada unpacks it as he goes through the Bhagavatam. So we have to seriously study the first and second cantos and really get to know Krishna and not give in to the desire to just want to hear what we may make a show of wanting to be spiritual about the 10th canto. But really, if we don't understand Krishna and his nature and really seriously study the first and second cantos, we will just be looking for somewhat of a mundane romance in the 10th canto. Okay, so Prabhupada's, comparing the lotus feet. There was another part I wanted to read. And so he goes into the part Shiva says about the spiritual master. The Lord is the supreme spiritual master, and the bona fide representative of the Supreme Lord is also a spiritual master. The Lord from within enlightens the devotees by the effulgence of the nails of his lotus feet. So we're focusing on not only his feet, but the nails of his feet, the toenails, and that they have an effulgence that enlightens the devotees. And his representative, the spiritual master, enlightens from without. Only by thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and always taking the spiritual master's advice can one advance in spiritual life and understand Vedic knowledge. So these two things right here, thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and always taking the spiritual master's advice. Because again, I'm going to harp on this a bit because I think we can always in our practice become complacent and just kind of complacently be a devotee, where we come and we do the service that's assigned to us and we read something every day to make sure we get our reading done, and we get our rounds done. We try to get them done before we go to bed. But we really want to take each of these things and say, I'm doing this for the pleasure of Krishna, and I have to keep track of my progress, right? Am I actually making progress with a sense of urgency? Am I trying to do what's needed to be done to actually make progress? Or am I just kind of physically showing up, but not mentally? Am I showing up and getting the job done, but not really with the intention of making advancement? We want to get to that platform where we do things really, we can theoretically do things for the pleasure of Krishna, but there will come a time if we make advancement where we do things simply because we want to please Krishna, right? Because in the Rupa Goswami explains that in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that the impetus for practicing devotional service in the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness comes from the order of the spiritual master. So the spiritual master says, go to Mangalarti, so I got to go to Mangalarti. But the impetus later comes from just that your own taste to do it. You want to do it. No one has to tell you to do it. It just becomes spontaneously. And so that means we have to do our best to read Prabhupada's books and take every sentence very seriously. So this one sentence, Prabhupada's giving us a prescription. The prescription is think of the lotus feet of the Lord and take the spiritual master's advice, always taking the spiritual master's advice. And we see that's followed by what we recite every morning as the 10 offenses. The opposite of taking the spiritual master's advice is disobeying the spiritual master's advice, right? That's an offense to the holy name. And so we want to think of each of these things as we recite the 10 offenses, for example. We should really think about them as we're reciting them, and really take them to heart and then apply them. Because again, recitation, once you actually know what something says and you know it by heart, it's easy to say it it's easy to be repeating something. We know this when we chant our japa, right? It's like you can think of everything under the sun while your mouth is just parroting something that you've memorized, right? So that's especially hard with japa because when you've been chanting for many months, years, decades, it's just second nature. It's just there. You can say it and think of a million things. You can do a million things, but we have to be careful not to. We have to be careful to put all of our effort into paying attention, thinking about it, thinking about how it applies to us, thinking about how we can engage it in our spiritual life, how we can follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Because oftentimes, and this kind of happens in the beginning stages, often when someone's new, is they have ideas about how they want to enjoy sense gratification, and they go to the guru to see if he'll rubber stamp it, right? It's like, I have this thing I want to do. Can you give me blessings? Rather than going to the spiritual master and saying, how can I make advancement in spiritual life? What do you suggest? I had an idea about service and I wanted to run it by you to see if you think it's a good idea. I had this idea about there's this thing that I want. I have this material desire. What should I do about it? Can I dovetail it in Krishna's service? So we go to see from the guru how we can take our desires or take our thoughts and engage them in Krishna's service. And of course, as one makes advancement and one gets more and more of a taste for devotional life, that relationship's going to change a little with the spiritual master. The spiritual master doesn't need to hold one by the hand later on as much as they do in the beginning, right? In the beginning, we're starting from scratch. And of course, we could say, well, we have this example of Shukadeva Goswami where he's only 16 years old, but more exalted than many of the others. Of course, Prabhupada will say later in a purport that everyone stood up to greet him except Vyasadeva and Narada Muni. So I don't want to, I'll let the person who's giving that class talk about that. But even though he's only 16 years old, right? And Prabhupada talks about in this previous verse, in verse 25 of the Bhagavatam, he says, the sages were not unanimous in their decision as to what was to be done. Right. So he said for spiritual salvation, there were many prescriptions according to the different modes of different persons. So we have that in the Vedas are divided in different ways, and parts of the Veda are divided according to the modes of nature. I don't want to go into details because it's getting late, but they're divided according to the modes of nature. So different people can take to the Vedas depending on how they're affected by the different modes. And so Sukadeva Goswami, he was the one who knew what the ultimate goal of life was and knew how to explain it and teach it to Maharaj Parikshit. So he was the one, he's going to be given the seat of honor and be able to speak this Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit so that he can, he's going to be able to be the best one to answer that question that Maharaj Parikshit asked, which was what? What did Maharaj Parikshit first ask Shukadeva Goswami? Or he asked the sages first, I should say. First, he asked the sages. They all had different opinions, but Shukadeva Goswami is going to have the best opinion. Does anyone remember? We went over it. I think it was yesterday.
What is the question, Prabhu?
What's the question that Maharaj Parikshit asks Shukadeva Goswami? First, the sages. What does he first ask the sages? And then what does he ask Shukadeva Goswami? Same question. Shukadeva Goswami has the best answer. So when Prabhupada said there were different prescriptions or different opinions, what is he referring to? To what question?
I do not remember, Prabhu. Yesterday I heard 2-3 classes and I'm like, do not remember what is coming into similar to it. Thank you, Prabhu.
He asked, what's the duty of man, especially one who's about to die? Right. And then Prabhupada said, everyone's about to die. So that's the most important. There were 2 questions that he asked. He said, he said that everyone's about to die. So that's an important question. It's just to ask, what's the duty of a man who's about to die? Because all of us are going to die. We just don't know when. And so we shouldn't waste any time. We should get right to it. So Shukadeva Goswami is the best person to answer this question. He has the the best answer, which is the truest answer. And he's gonna, so that's why he's given this seat. He's honored for his achievements and not for his advanced age. It's not just the age of a person. It has to do with and of course that doesn't, so we still have an etiquette, right? Someone may come to Krishna consciousness and they've gotten pretty far in their previous life, and they come to Krishna consciousness and they take to it very quickly and they make advancement very quickly. That doesn't mean that they no longer show respect to those who are older than them, have been practicing longer. But it also doesn't mean they know less than them, then they know less than they do necessarily, but they should still show respect. We still don't want to come in and say, Shukadev Goswami didn't show up and say, listen, I know better than all of you. I'm way more advanced. I'm gonna, I think I should give just everybody knew. Everyone knew. And so that's why he was given the seat of honor. So we still have to have tact. Even if we knew better than someone who's senior to us, we still should show etiquettes. We still should have manners, right? We still should treat them with respect and dignity and not try to show that we know better than they do. If we know more than somebody else, it'll become obvious. And especially if we do it in a humble way, because Krishna can take away our intelligence and our wisdom, right? If we're disrespectful to those who are senior to us, that we may know something more than they do, and we show it off, Krishna may take it away from us. He may take away that ability, or he may take away our audience. He may put us in a situation where if we're not humbled, then we don't have anyone to show our knowledge to anyways. So we still have to be humble. We still have to have tact. We still have to see them as senior to us and treat them with the proper respect. We have those three different types of relationships: senior to senior, senior to junior, and peer to peer. So we still want to keep those in order, regardless of how much we know. And I'll just end on this. I remember witnessing some many years ago. There were some devotees who had learned Sanskrit, and they were fairly new to Krishna consciousness. Not so new, but they were definitely newer than the senior devotees that they started to criticize. So they had learned Sanskrit, and one of these devotees, and there was a senior devotee who had written a book. And I don't want to say which book because I don't want to give away details, but he had written a book on one of Prabhupada's books. It was a commentary on it. And this new devotee, fairly new devotee, he was criticizing and correcting his Sanskrit. And I knew it wouldn't end well, and it didn't. That devotee actually ended up leaving the movement. And it happened slowly. He slowly started dismantling his spiritual life. He had some deities that he was worshiping, some Shilas, I think. And as he started to lose, I guess, taste for Krishna consciousness, he started giving away his deities. And next thing you know, he disappeared from the practice of Krishna consciousness. I don't think he's ever come back again. I haven't heard that he's been back, but we have to be very careful with our etiquette and not let our knowledge or any wisdom that we gain get to our head. We should always be humble. Okay, so I'll end here. It's getting late. Does anyone have any points, questions, comments, realizations?
I have one question, Prabhu. After class, I'll ask you. It's already 8:37. Thank you.
All right, so if no one has any points or any other questions, we'll end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.